Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I have a tutorial for you today. I've been working on my list of your suggestions, and quite a few of you have asked me to make a sewing machine cover, which I have made. I don't think this is a true beginner's project, but it wasn't hard. I have made this with a foam, but I have to disclose this right now. I'm very disappointed in the foam that I was using. It seems to have failed. I was using a Patron product, a fusible foam, which is supposed to fuse, and it didn't. I show you. I do it according to the directions, and as I was doing it, something happened. It was either the fabric that I've used this delightful fabric that I've had for a while, that either the foam either shrunk or something, but it did not fuse very well. At one point I thought to myself, oh, if I'd had a basting spray, I would have taken everything off and done that, or my Elmer's glue stick, but I was sort of stuck into the project, and I thought, I can't really be bothered. So as you will see, the project isn't as pristine as I like things to be. But again, not really my fault. I don't know what happened. I tried to do the foam according to everything that was, to the directions, and it didn't really work. Although for this project, it's absolutely fine. I show you exactly what to cut. My measurements are to my machine. This is a fairly deep. Yes, excuse me.
Where is the insurance card?
I have your insurance card.
Can I?
In a moment.
I have 8 minutes. I have 8 minutes to do this.
It's in my wallet.
Thank you.
You're welcome, darling. I used this machine, which is a backup machine, my Husqvarna. So I tell you the width, the height, the depth, that your measurements for your machine, how you figure out your cutting instructions. So my measurements that I give you are for this size machine. I show you exactly, everybody has a different size machine, how to measure your machine for your cutting. I did allow for my handle. I thought, oh, I was just going to make basically an upside down tote bag, right? I put a tote bag over. I'm like, it's an upside down tote bag, right? So I was thinking, oh, but then I thought, no, I have a handle here. And actually, that's really quite nice. I have a handle, so I figured out how to make a bound hole here. And again, no pattern, no great scientific way that I did that. I just sort of figured it out. But it turned out really nice. It's nice for my sturdy handle here. So I hemmed it. I could have lined this bag, but I wasn't bothered, even in the beginning, that I have raw seams on the inside. It's a sewing machine cover, right? I'm not sending people to the moon here. But if I had wanted to line it, I could have done. But again, I got a little bit discouraged because it's all sort of wrinkled. But I thought, oh, I'll carry on. You get the basic idea. My nice little sewing machine cover. So I'm chipping away at my list that you had given me. And again, quite a few people had said, oh. And I was thinking you could sort of do, without the handle here, you could sort of do this, the construction method for a mixer, or for for a toaster, or for something like that. It's basically that, you measure the height, the width, the depth. I do hope you enjoy it. Just I have a real quick, I saw Jen yesterday. I mean, we text back and forth all the time, but I saw her yesterday out back, 6 foot apart, masked, whatever. And she said hello. She's home, she's schooling her 3 children. The 2 older ones are doing great. Her 6-year-old isn't doing great. He's in 2nd grade and having a little bit of a time. Excuse me. Yes?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm in the middle of something. Okay, just one moment. Okay, just one moment, Maxwell.
Okay, sorry.
Maxwell's asking me to do something. Say hello.
Yes,
Jen said hello. Parker's just doing, he's trying in 2nd grade with his headphones and trying to focus, but she's like, I'm in 2nd grade. She said, I didn't like being in 2nd grade when I was in 2nd grade, and now she's like, I'm 43 and I'm in 2nd grade again. So she's having a time of it, as most of you are. So odd, weird times that we're living in. So I just thought I'd make a little sewing machine cover. Do you like it?
I do.
You do like it? Yeah, look how wrinkled.
For a girl.
For a girl, yeah. Lovely fabric. Again, I show you, this fabric is out of print. Because I know quite a lot of you, when you see it up close, it was delightful. It's like old-fashioned vintage patterns, sewing patterns. I've had this forever. But it's a Wyndham fabric and it's out of print. But anyway, this is my tutorial to follow. I hope you enjoy it. And again, thank you so very much. And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. So here is the cutting out pieces for my sewing machine cover. Hopefully you will have seen this if I've made it properly. If I haven't, you won't see this tutorial. But here is the sewing machine that I am going to be making my cover for. This is a sapphire, a Husqvarna sapphire. And what you do, each one of yours sewing machine covers will obviously fit your sewing machine. So this is measurements for this machine, which is a fairly decent sized machine. But what I did is I measured here are the measurements of this machine for my cover. I measured the width of my machine. Okay, now when you go to measure your width, I made it about 1 inch bigger, maybe 1.25 inches or so, something like that, all the way out to the beyond the wheel, the furthest that your machine is sticking out. That's where you want to measure it, plus about 1 inch or 1.5 inches, and say 1 inch on each side. Okay, so it would come out here. Mine measures 21 inches wide. Then I measured the height of my machine. And again, the height of my machine is, let me just see. Let me just get my ruler here. The height of my machine is only 12 inches, but I actually erred on the larger side, and I've made the height of my machine 13 inches because I want it to stand. I want it to. I don't want it to crush my machine. I want there to be a little bit on each end. Then I measured the depth of my machine, and the depth of my machine is from the side here. The depth of my machine, and my machine measures at the widest point front to back 9.5 inches. Okay, again, I'm erring on the bit of the larger side because it actually is only about 8.5 inches, but I'm making mine wider. So once you get the height, the width, the height, and the depth, then you can start cutting your fabrics out. Now, this is my fabric, and as you can see, it's just a delightful sewing machine pattern, vintage patterns. Now, I got this, I believe, from Joanne Fabrics. It is a Wyndham, W-I-N-D-H-A-M fabric, but I looked it up because I know some of you are going to be saying, oh, where did you get your fabric? I got this many years ago. It's a Wyndham fabric, and I did look it up. It's out of stock or out of print. But I've pulled this from my stash here, and what I've done is I have cut out my 5 pieces. I've cut out 2 the front, to the front and the back, 2 the sides, and 1 on the top. Okay, and what I've also done, and I'll give you the measurements, but I'm going to be making a very stiff. Hopefully you'll have seen it. A very sturdy, stiff sewing machine cover, so it stands by itself. And I'm using this foam here. Okay, you don't have to use the foam. If you would want to, if you can't get the foam, you can use a car headliner, which I've used before, which is like a foam. This is a fusible foam, or you can use just a stiff interfacing. This foam here, however, is from Patron, and it's number FF78F1, okay? And it's a flex foam one-sided fusible stabilizer from Patron, okay? It has a fusible side. I have to figure that one out. But I'm going to fuse my foam to my fabrics here. If you can't get the foam, again, you can use a iron-on fleece, a fusible fleece, or an interfacing, or even a batting if you would want to quilt this. I'm okay because it's going to be fused on and it's not going anywhere. Basically, I'm making a fabric box, a box as it were. So I have cut here. I have cut for the front and the back of my sewing machine. I have cut 2 pieces of fabric and 2 pieces of foam, okay? 2 of each. The fabric I have cut 13 inches high by 21 inches wide. I have a directional print here, as you can see. So if you have a directional print, you want to make sure that it's going the correct way. The foam, I don't want all of this foam in my seam allowance. So I'm cutting my foam on all my pieces about an inch smaller, a ½ inch smaller all around. So my foam for my front is going to be 12 inches by 20 inches. So my sides here, again, my directional fabric is going the proper way. My sides, I'm cutting again, 2 each of the fabric, 2 each of the foam. My fabric, I'm cutting 9½ inches by 13 inches. Remember, my 9½ inches is my height. Okay, excuse me. My 9½ inches is my depth. My 13 inches is my height. All right. This is for the sides. My foam, I'm cutting smaller. I'm cutting my foam 8½ inches by 12 inches. The top, I'm cutting 1 piece of fabric and 1 piece of foam. I'm cutting my fabric 9½ inches by 21 inches wide. I'm cutting my foam 8½ inches by 20 inches wide. Now what I'm going to do is and also I'm going to try to figure out, I have a handle, a carrying handle on the top of my sewing machine here. I might have to just jiggery-pokery it about, but I want to try to make an actual handle, a hole for my carrying handle. So what I have done, and if I mess it up, you'll see me mess it up, but because I'm not quite sure how I can do this. But what I've done is I've just cut a piece of muslin, and what I have done is I've sort of, let me see if you can see my machine here. Oh yeah, you can. Let me just pull this up just slightly here. What I have done is I've taken my piece of muslin. It's not quite centered, so I can't quite center it when I go to do it, but it's almost centered. I've just taken my piece of muslin and or a piece of fabric, you can use the same fabric, and I've just sort of held it on there, and I've made it a little bit bigger, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting out, almost like a big buttonhole, or something like that. We're going to be cutting out a hole for my handle. Again, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, that's just a piece of muslin that I cut on the larger side. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my iron, and I'm going to fuse on my fusible foam. So I'm fusing my fabric to my foam, and you always want to read the directions when each fusible sometimes is a little bit different. And this foam, which is flex foam one-sided fusible, the instructions are cover with a damp press cloth. So sometimes you have to read the instructions with an iron set to the wool steam setting, press in place for a full 10 seconds. Repeat, lifting slightly. So I have my pressing cloth here, which is just basically a piece of muslin, and I have a bottle of water, a spray bottle of water, just from the dollar store, and I'm going to be keeping that on for about 10 seconds or so, like the instructions say. Again, always read the instructions for your fusible. Some you need to have a damp cloth, some you don't. So it's very important that you read your instructions. I'm at my machine. I have fused on my foam, and I must say I've done it properly, but it's sort of wrinkling. Something has happened. I don't know whether my foam, I've never really had this happen. My foam, it seems like it's not fused as well as it should have. Again, I don't know what's wrong. It's sort of bubbling. sort of not going. I could attach some with my glue stick, but at this point, for this project, I'm not really bothered, but it looks a little bit wrinkly, so that's not my fault. But anyway, what I'm going to be doing now is I'm taking my larger piece, my front piece, yeah, it's wrinkled, whatever. I'll address that in the beginning. My front piece and my side pieces here, and I'm just going to stitch. And as you can see, I'm going to back stitch at the top here. I didn't put the foam in the seam allowance. Some of it is, which is okay. Most of it's not. It's about 1/2 inch. If I didn't cut it perfectly straight, but most of it is just going onto the fabric like that. Basically, we're attaching the 4 pieces of fabric here, the side, and then the other side here, and again, always pretty sides together, and then I will be attaching the back or the other side. So I have just sewn all of my 4 corners together, and I just have to tell you, I'm going to continue with this tutorial. I'm very, very disappointed that this is happening like this. This is my other machine. I'm going to have a rethink about this using the foam, or I might have gotten a bad lot because it has not fused hardly at all. I've done it according to the directions, and as you can see, it's like something has shrunk and then the fabric hasn't, or whatever. For my sewing machine case, which is my secondary machine, I'm okay with it. But in the future, if this happened, just for time's sake, you can probably get away with it. If you have this difficulty, the foam, this is a first for me, I would quilt that. I don't feel like doing that right now. Now, you might be saying, how are you going to finish the bottom? I could make this I could line this if I wanted to, but I'm not really bothered right now about lining it because, again, as I say, this is my secondary machine, and I wanted this to be sort of a quick project. I'm not bothered that there's raw seams inside, and as you see, it holds up, it stands up. Now, I will be using, I'm going to figure out if I'm going to use a binding on the bottom or if I'm just going to turn it in to make it more of a quick project. However, before I attach the top, and before I try to figure out this handle thing also, I'm going to pinch, because I've made it a little bit bigger, as you can see. It fits beautifully. I didn't want to struggle putting it over. I just wanted to put it onto my case. But what I am going to do is I'm going to press these seams here. This looks pretty bad, but that's okay. I'm going to press these seams together here, pinch them together, and press them. And then I'm going to just stitch a little bit less than 1/4. As you can see, I've pinched together my seam here, and I've gone over and I've ironed that really well. And then I have a heavy-duty jeans needle in my machine. Even though we're going through the foam here, we are going through the foam. I didn't go through the foam on my seam, as you can see, but on this bit I am going. The machine does that beautifully. It's a very soft foam, so your machine, even if you have just a smaller domestic machine, won't have any trouble. Just go slowly and go right down that seam. All we're doing is making these corners really nice and sharp. As you can see, I have sort of made my corners a little bit big, a little bit more defined with my stitching. And what I'm doing is I'm just roughly attaching, just with a few clips, just to keep it sort of straight. I'm attaching my top. I'm not sewing anything yet. I'm attaching my top piece. We are going to be sewing this obviously around all 4 corners. But as you know, I have a handle here, right? So what I'm going to do, and again, I'm just sort of, this is an experiment. My handle is there. My handle is there, from there to there, okay? I have this piece of fabric. Remember, I cut that out. Again, this is, if you have a pattern or something, you might want to do it a little bit better. I can feel my handle. And with a pen, I know I know vaguely I want to cut there. So I'm going to go to the end of my handle and then about 1 inch. I have a large handle here. And then I'm going to, I'll show you, show it when I get it down. I'm going to, well, I have to, that's where I'm going to put it. Let me just put a few pins there. I'll show you in a minute. Again, not real professional, but I think it'll work. So I'm taking this off my clips, and this is what I'm going to end up with. Okay, that is what I'm going to end up with. All right, I've sort of made a marking for my handle. I'll straighten those lines up, and then I'm going to stitch right on that line. I'll take you over to my machine, and it's like when you make a sort of a buttonhole or a zipper. I'm going to cut. I'll show you what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch on those lines, and then I'm going to turn this, then we're going to cut it, and then I'll turn it inside, but I'll show you. Hopefully that'll work for my handle. So if you can see what I've roughly done, and it's not really straight, so I'm going to just sort of straighten out that line. I'm going to sew this piece of muslin to the right side of my fabric on my top. Just going to sort of eyeball it a bit straighter. By all means, if you wanted to make it really straight, you can. I'm going to reinforce that, go back. Hopefully this will work. When I was learning to sew, this would be what almost would be like a bound buttonhole. Or if in handbag making, this is how you would put a zipper into the front of a handbag. Might be a little bit crooked, but it'll be okay. Right to the end there, and then back stitch there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these pins. I'm going to take my pair of sharp scissors, and there's like right in the middle of those two lines there. I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut up to about there. Turn it around. I'm cutting obviously through the foam. I can see my stitching there. Then I'm going to make a V right up to the stitching. I'm not obviously cutting my stitching. Very, very carefully, just right up to the stitching, because we want to turn this fat piece in to make a bound hole. So take it right there, and then right there. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this inside out. There we go. So now, as you can see, hopefully it's more towards the back. I'm quite okay with that. Now whenever I do this, the train of thought is to push that fabric right out, like make a seam. I quite like a little bit of the fabric showing. So I'm going to go over to my ironing board, and I'm going to press it, but then I'm going to stitch. So you see, it almost ends up like a little bit of piping. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm going to go over, and I'm going to make sure that these are nice and pressed out. I might have to clip that a little bit more so I don't have a pucker at the end, but I think that will work as far as my handle goes. I've top stitched along that opening. Let's make a nice square opening. Hopefully it'll be in the right place. That's okay. If it's not perfect, it's fine. I always say that. But now I have this inside here. That's pretty good on either side. And I don't want that to flip on the inside. It's not finished or anything, but it's on the inside. It's just it's fine. But I am going to just sort of secure it down and almost sort of make a feature of it. Just make a feature of it. I'm going to go in about. I'm not going to go in the whole thing. I'm just going to go sort of to the top there, as you can see, and I'm just going to sort of do a decorative. It's not doing any. It's just holding that fabric down, but it's sort of outlining, echoing my handle. Sort of trying to be a little bit practical, but making it a feature also. So I'm going to go about half an inch to that point in the diagonal, needle down. Yeah, I like that. And then on this side, and I'm just catching it underneath. The point there down to the diagonal, about there, needle down, press her foot up, make sure everything is nice and smooth inside, and it's the same size. Again, just making sort of a feature. As you can see, I did not trim any of the foam away. I want the foam, that's a double thing around my handle, of double thing of foam in that seam, so it ends up padded. Again, I'm not pleased at all with the way this fusible looks, but that's all right. It's just a sewing machine cover. But yeah. And then coming up here, back stitch. I just have to go a few more stitches and back stitch. So I've sort of, as you can see, I've sort of made a feature of my handle, like a padded handle, and then it's like that. And I'll just trim off. It's raw edges, but I'll just trim off that right there. You'll never see it. And trim off, and I'll trim off that. But on the outside, it looks really nice. My handle hole there turned out pretty good. I'm quite pleased. I hate this. This is horrible. I don't know what's happened here, but never mind. You get the idea of this. Not too hard at all to make. So I've sort of fit that in there like that, my top. And now what I'm going to do, I'm assured that my handle is pretty good. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, because I wanted to make sure I have the front of my case and my handle here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I've cut this properly, I'm going to match up the side seams. Now we have taken up slightly. Remember, we took up just a little bit of there, but that's okay when we come to there. I'm going to be clipping the ends together, the sides together, the top and the front together. Okay, I'm going to clip that together along the top seam, and I'm going to sew along the top seam. And I'm going to put my needle, let me just see here. I'm going to put my needle down. This is a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. I'm going to sort of have to, sort of because I took them in. I'm going to just put my needle into that, where that intersection meets, okay? Because once we stitch this on, then I'm going to come around. I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to bring this over to here. I'm going to bring this back over, this end here, and I'm going to stitch it up to here. But I'm going to take you to my machine and I'll show you how I do that. I'm going to first of all stitch this top bit here on my first one. Matched up the top edges, made sure my handle's in the proper place when I flip it back, and I'm stitching along there. Sometimes I catch the foam, sometimes I don't. That's fine. And what I've done is I've started right at the corner. Right there, as you can see, I've started right at the corner. I put my needle down because we're going to be flipping this up to the other corner. But I'll try to show you how I do that. It's a little bit fiddly. I don't know if this is a project for a beginner, because just to try to make this boxed corner, it's just slightly fiddly. So I'm coming here. As you can see, I have a bigger seam allowance. I'm just going to sort of end it right into that seam, which I've made sort of a crease, but it'll be okay. Now, there's my top bit, okay? You see that? It's ended up nice, except there's a wrinkled mess. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this around my side piece. I'm going to just bring it around, and I'm going to sew that onto that top piece there. Okay, you got that? I'm just going to sort of pivot it onto that, pivot on that corner, and I'm just going to sew these seams together, the top bit. I'm going to go into the corner of each seam like that, matching the top raw edges. It's a bit difficult to explain, but once you feel it and you can get it, and I'm not quite sure that my corners are going to be, really, really, really perfectly square, but in this, I'm not all that bothered. That's going to be fine. So I'm just going to back stitch, keeping these two raw edges together. There's foam on you see, here's my seam. There's foam over here, so I'm not sewing through a million layers of foam here. And I'm going to go to this point here. And right there. Now I'm going to pull back. Now I'm going to pull back my long bit, my other long piece here, and I'm just going to continue right around the top of my my case here, just flipping that right up and matching the edges up. So here's my case, pretty much finished. Because I'm done with it. I'm a bit fed up with it. What I am going to do, my handle works beautifully. My handle works real nice in that hole. What I am going to do is like I did on the corner seams here, over here. I'm going to pinch this seam here. I'm going to pinch this top seam here. And I'm going to go and I'm going to top stitch along there. Just to make that seam, just sort of box it really, really nice on the top edges over here. My corners turned out pretty well. Sometimes you sort of, when you're doing this, you sort of have to, well, if you cut it well enough, it's pretty good. You have to sort of pivot there. That's a little bit scrunched in there. It's okay. But I am going to go over and I'm going to pinch this top seam and I'm going to top stitch along there to make it really like a nice box. Then, look at that. Yeah, it really shows up on the, really shows up. It's terrible. Anyway, then I'm just going to, I'll show you how I'm going to hem this. I'm probably going to well, there is a 1/2 inch seam there, 1/2 inch from the foam. If I pull it down like that, I may just turn that in and up and just stitch it down on itself. I don't think I'm going to bother because I'm disappointed with it, with how it's wrinkled, to bind it or anything. But you could do, but when I get to that, I'll show you. So here is my finished, sort of squared off, boxed off bag here. Oh, wrinkled mess. But I quite like that. And I have a carrying place for the handle. It's nice. Now, what I am going to do, I'll just put this down here, because I'm very discouraged with it, but it's okay. I'm just going to go over to my machine, and I'm just going to turn this edge under here, hemming my bag, my little case here, and because I had cut the foam 1/2 inch or so smaller than the bag itself, the bottom, I'm just turning that 1/2 inch and then I'm just sort of rolling it back over on itself and sort of tucking that in, just pulling and tucking like that, so I have a hem, and I'm just going through two lots of foam there. So as you can see, I'm just pulling this out. I have that 1/2 inch, and I'm just sort of tucking and rolling that. And then just stitching it so there's a nice, sort of heavy-duty finished bottom edge. So tuck it and then roll it. So I'm folding it over, tucking it, and then rolling it. I have it straight in front of me. The needle is straight in front of me, so I can sew it nice and straight. Always important to sit everything straight in front of your sewing machine, in front of your body here. Even if you're off to the side slightly, it can get a little bit skewed. So as you can see here, I'm folding it, and now it's a little bit of fabric. Sorry, my hands are in the way. It's a little bit of a fabric coming to that stitched seam there, but just go slowly, because that's a few layers. You might want to hand wheel it so you don't break a needle. I know my Juki can take that. And again, I'm just sort of folding that over and then rolling it and making that nice rolled finished hem. I am disappointed with this fabric, or my foam here, but what are you going to do? It's doing its job. As you can see, this is where I started, so I sort of just tuck that and then finish it off. So it has a nice finished bottom seam. Again, this is my side seam. I don't want to be whacking that. And I'll just connect up to where I began. And then back stitch. I'm not bothered about lining this. By all means you could. But there's my lovely finished bottom edge, my wrinkled my wrinkled bag. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, folks, and got the basic gist of how I made my bag. If you wanted to quilt it, by all means. If you have more luck, that's a shame. I've never really had that with my fusible. But again, I'll address that in the beginning. All right. See you, folks. Bye.